European leaders and Zelenskyy hold talks with Trump ahead of Friday's summit with Putin. Joining us is Ambassador Dileep Sinha. Ambassador Sinha is a former Indian envoy to Greece and the United Nations offices in Geneva. He is an author, most recently, of Imperial Games in Tibet, the Battle for Statehood and Sovereignty. Ambassador, welcome to DD India News Hour. Now, straight off the bat, Ambassador, what exactly would Trump and Putin be discussing on Friday? Reports suggest that a ceasefire and or a land swap is on the agenda.
Yes, this is what the reports coming out of the US are, that Donald Trump is very keen on a ceasefire, and he hopes that the ceasefire can be predicated on a land swap. Now, I don't know what he means by a land swap, because Ukraine holds a very small, tiny little strip of land in the Kursk region in the north, because the other territory that had occupied in Russia, it has been pushed out of that area by Russian forces. So the main occupation today in Ukraine is by Russia, both of Crimea, which it had taken several years ago, and the Donbas region, where it occupies something like 20% of Ukrainian territory. So any swap would not really be an equal swap, because Ukraine doesn't have much or any territory worth swapping with Russia. But we have to see what Donald Trump means when he says by swapping, because he's not talking about withdrawal of Russian forces.
Do you expect a breakthrough, or do you think they will agree to disagree?
Well, some reports coming out now from the US state that President Trump hopes that this will be a preliminary meeting where he hopes to get an idea of what President Putin wants or he's thinking of, because the fact that Zelenskyy has been able to get the full support of the EU plus of the UK. So that is a very strong support that he has got, and the Europeans have come out very strongly in favor of protecting Ukraine's territorial integrity. So President Trump will have to keep that in mind,
right,
before he claims to strike any deal with Russia.
Ambassador, help our viewers understand something. Zelenskyy says peace cannot return until he is involved in the talks. Now, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine is a phrase that became popular some time ago, but few are talking about it today. Why is Ukraine not part of these talks?
Well, that is because President Trump thinks that he has a friendship with Putin and he doesn't need Zelenskyy involved in the talks, perhaps because Putin himself is not prepared to talk directly to Zelenskyy. So even if Zelenskyy goes to Alaska, then it won't be a tripartite dialogue. It would at best be what are called proximity talks, where Zelenskyy is in one room and Putin in another, and Trump does the shuttling. But that kind of a talk is held essentially by diplomats who are adept at this kind of a thing. I don't think President Trump would be able to do this. So President Trump feels that it is best that he goes alone and talks to Putin and see if he can get a deal. Because he feels that if Zelenskyy and Trump are anywhere near each other, then there'll be fireworks and the talks will break down.
Ambassador Sinha, I have a couple of questions looking at this situation from a New Delhi perspective. First, many in India have maintained that at the end of the day, the Ukraine-Russia conflict is a proxy war between the West and Russia. So would the Trump-Putin summit be a prelude of sorts to a grand bargain between the US and Russia?
Yes, that is the view held by many people, that this is really a proxy war between the East and the West. But we must also remember that it is still a question of Ukraine's territorial sovereignty,
right,
which was at one time recognized by Russia. So it is not as if there is no interest of Ukraine involved in this. And the fact that two superpowers sit down and talk about the fate of a small country is really a hark back to the old imperial days, when the big imperial powers sat down and drew lines across Asia and Africa and told the countries in these regions that their borders had been drawn. So I don't think in this age we should permit that to happen, because at the end of the day, there is a Ukrainian territory involved in this dispute.
Talking about India, Ambassador Sinha, New Delhi, for one, has welcomed the Trump-Putin summit. Now, Prime Minister Modi is one leader who has spoken to both sides, Putin and Zelenskyy. Now, we are told he could potentially meet Trump in September on the margins of the UN General Assembly. What's in it for India and the world at large? Would Ukraine-Russia peace ease the Trump tariffs, for instance, on India? What's really at stake for India in the Trump-Putin summit?
Well, even before the Trump tariffs came in the picture, India was very keen that there should be peace in the region because it led to a lot of tension, both in the economic sphere, in the prices of oil, and the fact that Russia came under sanctions, and Russia being an important defense supplier to India and also a trusted partner of historically, has meant that for India, it created a number of foreign policy challenges, especially in its relations with the West, particularly with Europe, because a number of the East European countries were very strongly in support of Ukraine. So all these relations became entangled in this dispute. So India had always emphasized the need for peace in the region and the need for talks to resolve the issues that had prompted Russia to invade Ukraine. So now, of course, the Trump tariffs have come in, where India buying Russian oil is one of the factors that has led to the additional 25% tariff on India. So this exacerbates the matter, but the original problem still remains, and we would like not only the additional penal tariffs to go, but even otherwise peace to be established, because it is not good for global peace, and it creates a huge amount of uncertainty in world politics.
Since you refer to Russian oil, Ambassador, if both Trump and Putin make peace come the 15th of August in their meeting in Alaska, do you think it'll ease the pressure or allow India to continue buying Russian oil without any hindrance?
Well, one hopes that if there is peace and Trump gets what he wants in the talks, then obviously one would expect that he would then ease on the tariffs that he has imposed upon India. But we must also remember that if there is genuine peace in the region and the sanctions on Russia are lifted, then Russia will start exporting the oil to Europe, which was its original market. It was only because of sanctions that Russia started selling oil to India.
What you said about Europe gives me a perfect segue to my next question to you, Ambassador. Now, European leaders, we saw them hold a virtual meeting with Trump and Zelenskyy. What are some of Europe's concerns or anxieties in terms of the summit?
The first anxiety is whether Trump will give away and accept Putin's demand to annex a large part, almost a quarter of Ukrainian territory, because that would mean that there would be a change in borders, which is generally frowned upon by leaders all over the world. And then, of course, the fear that Europeans have that the sanctions may still remain if Russia does not, the sanctions don't get lifted on Russia, then the tension of Russia not supplying its oil to Europe, or Europe not being able to buy its oil from Russia, and the overall fear that Europe has of Russian expansionism, those concerns also remain. So the security threat that Europe feels from this Russian aggression of Ukraine is a concern in Europe.
If I may quickly ask a follow-up question, we'll be discussing about India, Ambassador. How would the summit, if things go as planned, how will it impact India's ties with Russia and the US, given the circumstances they find themselves in as we speak?
Well, India has always made sure that its ties with Russia remain.
Right.
At the same time, improve relations with the US. So if relations between these two countries are good, as they had been for the last 20, 30 years, then it enabled us to maintain good relations with both sides. But if tensions increase, as they did in the case of the Ukraine war, then it made the walk for India a little more of a tightrope walk.
Talking about Trump, Ambassador Sinha, Trump is a self-proclaimed deal maker, but his critics say that he sees a potential business deal in everything he surveys. After all, Trump is a businessman. Does that help or hinder the cause of peace?
I think when it comes to the question of peace, yes, it is possible for Trump to strike a deal with Putin based upon certain extraneous factors, his trading interests or other factors. But the fact remains that if Ukraine and Europe do not accept the deal, then the whole thing will fall through. And that is the main problem, that just merely believing that the ceasefire can come through because of a deal between Trump and Putin does not mean that Europe and Ukraine will accept that.
And finally, Ambassador, I have to ask you this. If, as you say, Trump indeed strikes a deal with Putin sometime going forward, would that qualify him and the others for a potential Nobel Peace Prize?
That's a tricky one, because the Nobel Peace Prize has been given to all kinds of people. So I don't think I need to go into that.
Okay.
But certainly, since he will have got peace at least in some regions,
right.
He would certainly be more entitled to the Nobel Peace Prize than some other people who have been given this prize in the past.
All right, we'll leave it there. Ambassador, thank you for joining us. Pleasure as always to have you on this discussion. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated.